So, welcome everyone to today's deep dive. And I want to give a special welcome to you, the listener, especially if you are using this to practice your English.
Yeah, absolutely. We've specifically designed this discussion, to be really clear and easy to follow.
Right. Because today we are taking a journey back in time. We have some really fascinating historical documents in front of us, and we're looking at one very specific spring day, March 25, 1949.
Yes, 1949. And according to the source material we're examining today, this was a massive day of transition. The text described Chairman Mao Zedong and the Central Committee of the party physically moving their location.
Moving from the countryside, right, a place called Shibaipo.
Exactly, moving from the rural village of Shibaipo all the way to Peeping, which of course is the massive city we now know as Beijing.
Right, Beijing. And, when you read these documents, you'd expect this arrival in the big city to be this huge, relaxing victory lap, like they finally made it.
Oh, sure. That's a natural assumption.
But the sources describe something completely different. The leaders actually compared arriving in this major city to taking an exam.
Yeah, taking an exam. It's such a specific, counterintuitive metaphor that the historical texts focus on here.
I mean, when I hear the word exam, I immediately think of like sitting down at a tiny desk for a stressful math test or an English quiz. So what exactly were they testing?
Well, the documents frame this move not just as relocating an office, but as the dawn of a completely new era for China. This is just months before the founding of the People's Republic of China. So the exam, according to the text, was about the immense, heavy responsibility of leading a brand new country.
Okay, so it wasn't a test on paper. The test was the actual job of governing.
Precisely. Xibaipo was very rural. Managing a farming community is completely different from running a sprawling metropolis like Piping. You have to figure out electricity, massive food supply chains, public order.
Right, just keeping the lights on in a big city is a massive challenge.
It really is. And the source material highlights that adopting this exam mindset had a very specific psychological goal. It was designed to ensure the leaders stayed humble.
Ah, to prevent them from getting lazy after a big win.
Exactly. The texts note that by treating this as an ongoing test, they wouldn't relax. They would continue to work hard for the people, rather than just throwing a party and celebrating their arrival.
That is such a fascinating way to trick human nature.
Yeah.
Because usually when you win a championship, the dopamine fades and you stop trying as hard.
Right. You think the struggle is over.
Yeah.
But if you convince yourself the biggest test is happening right now, you stay sharp.
Okay, so they have this intense exam mindset. But before they could sit down and do the hard work of governing, the text describes this really grand arrival.
Yes, there was a very public moment before the administrative work began.
Because, you have to mark the start of a new era somehow, right?
You do. And the archival texts describe a grand military parade at Sichuan Airport.
See you in airport. Let's paint a picture of this for our listeners based on the sources.
Well, the documents describe thousands of soldiers standing in absolutely perfect lines.
Wow, thousands.
Yeah, wearing their uniforms with immense pride. And this was the moment leaders like Mao Zedong, Zhu Dai, and Zhu Enlai officially arrived and reviewed the troops.
But wait, I want to push back on one detail I noticed in the text. It says the leaders arrived in open-top cars.
Yes, open-top vehicles.
Was that just for show? Like, was riding around without a roof on the car just to look cool? Or did the sources say it served a specific purpose?
It's a great question. And the source material explicitly points out that this was a moment of, quote, great connection.
Connection between the leaders and the soldiers.
Exactly. Think about it. An enclosed car with windows creates a physical barrier.
Oh.
But the text suggests that being in an open-top car allowed everyone to see each other clearly. There were no physical barriers between the leadership and the people.
Oh, I see. It removes that visual hierarchy. They're sharing the exact same space.
Right. And the documents also give us a really vivid auditory picture. They mention the loud beating of drums, massive cheering from the crowd.
And the soldiers were shouting slogans, right?
Yes, they were shouting slogans focused heavily on victory and hope.
A slogan being, a short, memorable phrase used to spread an idea.
Exactly. And the source's own metaphorical summary of this entire parade is quite beautiful. The text says it acted as a big thank you to the past and a big hello to the future.
A big thank you to the past and hello to the future. That's a great phrase.
It is. The documents framed this event as a symbolic promise that a new, peaceful China was coming.
Okay, so we have this massive, exciting parade in a major city. The energy is high. Naturally, you would expect that after the parade ends, the leaders are going to drive those open-top cars right to a giant palace, right?
You would think so. That's what usually happens in history.
Yeah, you move into the most luxurious headquarters you can find. But our sources revealed they did something entirely different.
Very different. According to the text, the leaders first went to stay in a place called Fragrant Hills, or Shangshan.
And the text makes it very clear that Fragrant Hills was not a palace.
No, not at all. The source describes it as a very simple, basic place.
To put this in perspective for our English learners listening, it's like winning a major global championship, having a huge parade, and then choosing to go sleep in a basic camping tent instead of a luxury hotel.
That's a perfect analogy.
So, based on the text, what was this choice meant to communicate? Why do that?
Well, the source explains that this choice demonstrated a deep desire to stay close to nature and, more importantly, close to the working people.
Ah, so if they had moved straight into a palace, the people might have thought, oh, they've changed. They only care about wealth now.
Exactly. The text highlights that for them, character was far more important than money or fancy things. And this actually brings up a fantastic English vocabulary word that the source material touches on.
Oh, yes, the concept of integrity.
Right. Integrity.
For our listeners, integrity basically means doing the right thing, staying true to your values, even when it's difficult or when no one is watching.
And rejecting urban luxury for a simple place like Fragrant Hills is a perfect historical example of integrity, according to the documents.
It really is. Now, this is where I think today's deep dive gets incredibly useful for you, the listener, because the source material doesn't just treat this as a history lesson, does it?
No, it doesn't. The text actually pivots. It uses this history from 1949 as a positive guide for our own lives today.
A positive guide. I love that. So let's break down this guide, especially for our listeners who are on this difficult journey of learning English. The text gives us 3 key takeaways, right?
Yes, 3 main points. The first one from the text is be humble.
Be humble, which goes right back to that exam metaphor.
Exactly. The source advises that even after you experience a victory, you have to keep learning.
This is so huge for language learners. Like, say you memorize 20 new English words today, that's a victory.
It is a great victory.
But if you lose your humility, you might think, oh, I'm an expert now, and you stop studying. You have to keep taking the exam every day to truly improve.
Right. The real exam is using those words in a real conversation, which brings us to the second takeaway from the text guide. Be disciplined.
Discipline. And how does the text illustrate that?
It links it back to the soldiers at the UN airport parade. The source tells the reader to stay organized and focused, much like those soldiers standing in perfect lines.
Oh, wow. Yeah, standing in perfect lines takes so much boring, repetitive practice. It's the same with English grammar. You have to be disciplined enough to practice every day, even when you're tired.
Exactly. Motivation comes and goes, but discipline keeps you in that straight line.
So we have humility and we have discipline. What is the third takeaway from the source?
The third piece of advice is to have a goal. The text emphasizes that you must always know why you are working so hard.
Your reason why.
Yes. The documents actually describe this goal as the fuel or the inner fire that keeps you going.
The inner fire. Because if your car doesn't have fuel, it doesn't matter how nice it is, it's not moving.
Precisely. Whether you are building a new country, according to the historical texts, or simply learning a new language today, you need that inner fire.
So what does the source text advise we do when things get scary? Because learning a language can be really intimidating.
The text uses the concept of the city as a metaphor for new, big challenges. And it says, we shouldn't be afraid of the city. We should face these challenges with a smile and a plan.
A smile and a plan. I really like that framing. The plan is your daily study discipline, and the smile is that positive, humble attitude.
It's a very practical framework extracted right from the historical narrative.
It really is. So let's just briefly recap the journey we've taken today through these historical documents.
Sure, we started with the monumental move from Shibai to the big city of Peeping.
Right, and how they viewed that arrival not as a time to relax, but as a rigorous new exam.
Then we looked at the Grand Parade at Xi'an Airport, where they established that connection with the people using open-top cars.
Saying thank you to the past and hello to the future. And then, of course, the contrast of living simply at Fragrant Hills, showing real integrity.
Which all led to the positive guide. Staying humble, staying disciplined like the soldiers, and keeping that inner fire fueled by a clear goal.
Now, the source text actually gives the reader a specific task to do, doesn't it? A sort of call to action.
It does. The text challenges the reader to think of one specific goal they want to reach this month.
Like reading a whole English storybook, for example.
Yes. And the specific instruction is to physically write that goal down in English.
Write it down, make it real. Don't just leave it in your head. So for you listening right now, that is your homework. Write down your English learning goal for this month.
It's a great way to commit to the discipline we talked about.
Definitely. But before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought to mull over. Something building on this idea from the sources.
Well, what's that?
Well, the sources talk about reaching the city and taking the exam, but think about this. Once you achieve that goal you just wrote down, once you actually finish that storybook or pass that English test, what will your next exam be?
Oh, that's a great point. Because reaching a goal isn't the end of the story.
Exactly. Because as our sources remind us today, life isn't just one single test. It is a beautiful, continuous journey of learning. Whenever you conquer one city, there's always going to be another challenge on the horizon to keep your inner fire burning.
That is a wonderful way to look at it. The learning never really stops.
It doesn't. And we want to warmly thank you for joining us on this deep dive today.
Yes, thank you so much for listening and practicing your English with us.
Keep facing your challenges with a smile and a plan. Stay strong, stay humble, and keep practicing. We'll see you next time.